Now, as I'm sure you know, there are different kinds of corruption, but arguably the worst is the type of dishonesty that ignores basic safety standards and kills innocent people. That's the sum of the text from a viewer, and what she's talking about is the latest building collapse in the suburb of Ikoyi in Lagos, Nigeria. A scene of rubble and death, with at least 45 people killed and dozens more injured. That, of course, is just another in the series, because since 2013, more than 80 buildings have collapsed in Nigeria, most of them in Lagos, including, of course, the infamous crash of the Synagogue Church of All Nations, which caved in and led to the deaths of 115 people. There have been other incidents in the Nigerian states of Kano, Taraba, Benue, Rivers, Abia, Imo, Anambra, Ondo, Ogun, Kwara, and the capital, Abuja. Well, Olayemi Shonubi has recently been elected as the new president of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, and he joins me now from our studios in Lagos. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and congratulations on your election as the new president of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors. I expect you fought off some competition there.
Thank you very much, Charles. I thank you for having me on your program. I'm delighted to be here.
And as you come on board, though, I mean, the building production process is plagued by failures and collapses. So clearly a challenging time ahead for you, I imagine.
Well, I believe for the nation, it's a trying time, it's a challenging time, not limited to our industry alone. But I think for me, what it has only brought out is the need for everybody to respect and engage professionals in all that they do. Be it in the construction, be it legal, be it accounting, be it doctors. You can't be sick and then instead of you to see a doctor, you go see somebody who owns the patent medicine store. So we need to allow professionals who have been trained to do their job.
But isn't that where institutes like yours come in? I mean, I'm wondering how much engagement you have with the decision-making bodies and the regulatory bodies. I mean, the Institute of Quantity Surveyors should have a seat there, shouldn't it?
I agree with you, but the quantity surveyors, the Nigerian quantity surveyors particularly, we've had some issues, running battle, silent running battle, because we never believed in confrontational battle with government. Over the years, the quantity surveyors have been neglected. So sometimes when people shout that, why is the cost of roads in Nigeria the highest globally? And then we say that, look, quantity surveyors who are actually trained in the cost management of all construction, infrastructure and what have you, are never engaged. We have shouted, but nobody seems to be listening to us. And part of the challenge that we have is like the quantity surveyor is a late entrant into the construction. It's one of the late entrants into the construction process. So the first Nigerian to qualified in the late 50s. And they came back to the country in the early 60s. Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors itself was formed in 1969. So you can imagine that you had some other professionals who have been undertaking what we are supposed to do before we came in. And they are not willing to yield ground. And we've been trying in all manner of advocacy to get government to understand what we do. In other parts of the world where quantity surveyors are used, is for them to have value for every penny, every kobo that is spent. So I think and that's why I'm happy I have this opportunity also to let the public know. It's there in the Bible, in the book of Luke, where Jesus Christ himself said, who amongst you wants to build a tower will not first sit down and count the cost before he starts building. Otherwise, his neighbor will look at him and say, look at this foolish man who started and couldn't finish. The person who counts that cost is a quantity surveyor. And for you to have a building or to have your project completed to time, to cost, and with value in mind, please engage a quantity surveyor.
Yeah, that's a very important point, and I expect that now that we've had this sort of more recent building collapse yet again in Lagos, I expect there'll be more people willing to listen to what you're saying now, and perhaps the government also prepared to bring people like you on board. We're going to take a break because we gobbled up a bit of time trying to get through to you there in Lagos. But please stay with us, because we're going to come back and continue this chat. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our discussion with the newly elected president of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, Olayemi Shonubi. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, my first guest today is the new president of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, Olayemi Shonubi. His election comes as we see more devastating building collapses in Nigeria. And Mr. Shonubi says his vision includes influencing government policies and laws that affect the building industry and deepening training on ethics, as well as ensuring that there is an effective practice monitoring committee at the Institute. Well, he's got his work cut out for him, because in the last 8 years alone in Nigeria, 83 buildings, possibly more, have crashed. More than 300 people have died and hundreds more have been injured. So why do such tragedies seem to occur so often in Nigeria? And what steps can be taken to prevent buildings from collapsing? Well, Mr. Olayemi, as I said, has recently been elected as the new president of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, and he is still with me from our studios in Lagos. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. Just first of all, for the members of the audience who might not know, tell us what a quantity surveyor does.
Well, like I've tried to explain earlier, the quantity surveyor is the person you need to talk to. As a matter of fact, right now, before it used to be after you have your drawings. But right now, I think before you even engage an architect, you need to get a quantity surveyor, because he is the one that will let you know whether the money you have can actually enable you to fulfill your dream. I mean, when I say your dream house, your dream office building, your dream shopping complex, because unlike before, when people used to say, cut your coat according to your size, now it's more about cutting your coat according to your cloth. So if you have 100 million, why do you want to go call somebody who will design a house that is worth 200 million? But if you engage a QS as a first step, he will be able to let you know what your 100 million can build for you. He will be able to advise you as to what maybe 50 million can build for you, because that is what we do. We are cost and financial managers as well as contractual, because on all construction projects, you have so many contracts. You have the man that will do the building, the construction, whatever. You have those little people that will do windows, that will do wardrobes, doors, and what have you. So the quantity surveyor will be at the center of it all and try to make sure that you get, like I said earlier, value for every kobo that you spend.
Well, that's interesting, and that's an important piece of information that I think people ought to keep in mind. And just returning to the issue of building collapses, there's a lot of palpable anger in Nigeria over those collapses, isn't there? And calls for civic officials to be held responsible because they appear to be allowing these constructions to be taking place. Is that what you see as the reason for why we're having this many building collapses?
Well, the civic officials have their own share of the blame. But ultimately, I think the blame falls flat at the feet of the developers or the promoters. The moment you want to do a major development, the first thing is to make sure you engage a professional that is well experienced, who has a pedigree of having done a similar development. For instance, you want to do a 21-story building, or let's say 30-story building. You want to go look for a professional who probably has done 25, 24-story building. You don't go look for somebody who probably just, his experience is cut out at 3 floors or 4 floors. Because the challenge in the design for 30-story structure is different from what you have at the 4 level. I mean, four floors. That's number one. Number two, when you are building on certain areas of the country, I will take Lagos, Port Harcourt, and most of the Niger Delta, you have the problem, the challenge with the soil. So the first thing you need to do is to do a soil test that will tell you the bearing capacity of your soil, the weight that soil can carry. So when you do that, the structural engineer will take the analysis and the result of that geotechnical, so we call it geotechnical test, and use that to design the structure after the architect has done his own side of the design. Now, in most cases, what you find out, what you probably will find out that happens on most sites, most clients are not willing to pay for geotechnical test. What they ask you is that, what did the man next door, what did he do? If what he has done is to do a pad foundation, which is the one you have column on footing, on pad footing, put the same for me. Forgetting that in the same area, you could have under the normal soil that we see, the normal ground, below the ground, you could have different soil conditions. Either by virtue of the fact that you have water passing underneath, maybe about 10 or 20 meters away from your site, or close to your site, or on your site, maybe, and then the adjoining site does not have water, underground water. So invariably, if you are using that same design for yours, there will be a problem. Because of the underground water, the bearing capacity of your own soil will be different. So it is important that that is first done before any other thing. But like I said earlier, we've always found out that most clients, most developers shy away because they think it's added cost. Everything comes to cost. And that's why I say, look, before you even start commencement, engage your quantity surveyor. He will be able to advise you and tell you, this is how to go about it. This is how much this will cost. So if you cannot afford what you have in mind, then you see how you can reduce. There's an aspect of our services that we call value engineering. And what that does is to try and see how we can marry the amount, the budget that you have with what you want, and give you as much as possible what you want without you having to go over your budget. But like I said, in most of these buildings that have collapsed, one, if the right professional or experienced professional is not used. Secondly, the soil condition. Third, of course, if the right professional is not used, registered and experienced, you find out that most times the developers or the client, they listen to the artisans. Artisans are not trained to do the work of engineers or the trained and registered professionals. And then an artisan goes on the site, he sees that on a particular site, instead of using 6 reinforcement rods, they will use 4. But he didn't know the reason why that was done. He didn't even know the sizes of the bars that were used. Then he comes to your site. Maybe on your site, what was designed by the engineer is 6. And he says, look, on another project, it was 4. These people, they just want to waste your money. No, 4 will be enough. And of course, the man had done his calculations before advising that you use 4 number bars on your design. But most clients don't understand that. What they are looking at is, how can I reduce costs? And like they normally say, penny wise, pound foolish. In reducing costs, you might be creating problem in the future because the structure may not be able to stand. So basically, that also is the issue. Now, there's another issue that is perennial now, and that is the fact that even some of the materials that are being used, for instance, the iron rods I mentioned, just before I got here yesterday, I saw a picture where an iron rod that is supposed to be, the diameter of it is supposed to be 10 mm. But what you have was actually 9.4. And then when you have that size, the diameter as that, it has been manufactured to be able to withstand, to have a certain strength. So if you don't meet that diameter, it may not necessarily have the strength. And when the structural engineer that is doing his design, he's done his design based on those calculations. So if the man has calculated using 10 mm diameter bar and certain numbers and what have you, and then somebody now supplies iron rod that is not up to 10 mm, of course, that means the strength of the reinforcement has been reduced. So that also could be a problem. There's another problem of even the concrete mix and the time for pouring the concrete so that you get the right water cement ratio. All these are technical issues that I don't think I want to bother listeners with, viewers with. But then that is why, like I said, it's important that you engage a registered and experienced professional.
Okay, well, we appreciate the fact that you actually enumerated those points, because those things are very, very important. Unfortunately, we lost a bit of time at the beginning making the connection with you, but I mean, talking with you has been absolutely fascinating, and listening to you talk about the things that are important in the building profession. Mr. Olayemi Shonubi is the new president of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, and he was talking to me there from Lagos.